This spring in March, I went to visit my sister in Orlando. And when we were there, we went to this Right to Life rally at the high school she teaches at. While we were there was this high schooler talking about what it means to defend life and why we should defend life. And he was talking about being Marian and our receptivity to the Father's will for us. And the whole time he was talking, I'm getting this sense like, wow, this guy really needs to go to the seminary. Like he's already a great speaker. He's a senior in high school. He really needs to go. So I finally work up the courage and like, you know what, I'm just going to say something to this kid, because if I was in that case, I would want someone to say something to me. And I go up to him like, hey, I really liked your talk, and have you ever thought of going to seminary? And to my surprise, he responds with, yeah, actually, I'm going in the fall. Thanks for your affirmation. And that absolutely blew my mind. Like, I'd never, ever been in a situation where I'd gone up to somebody and said, you should go to the seminary, and not been met with severe, like, no, not really, not for me. But he was actually going to the seminary.
Squeaky swings in the tall grass, the longest shadows ever cast. The water's warm and children swim, and we frolic about in our summer skin. Just greenery and humid air.
Welcome to the Buckstar Banter, where three seminarians just talk about life in the seminary and life in general and whatever we want. Now, this episode, we're going to talk about our summers. So, all three of us are pretty different people, and we've had very different experiences this summer, and we just want to talk about what it was like, and especially in terms of our vocation.
So this summer, I was at Yellowstone National Park, and it was kind of weird how I ended up going there. I was looking for a summer job. Last summer, I worked at a summer camp. I wasn't a huge fan because the pay wasn't that great, so I was like, you know what, I've always wanted to go out west. I'm going to apply for Yellowstone National Park. And to my surprise, they hired me without any interview. I should have seen that.
To my surprise as well.
Hey, well, I should have taken that as sort of a little red flag, because I went out there and I learned more about society and the culture today than I had in the past 20 years of my life. But living out there, living in the park, seeing nature in like such raw beauty, climbing up 3,000 foot ascents to 13,000 feet up, hiking 200 miles this summer, it was absolutely incredible. And one thing I was really just being inspired in my prayer life in that way, more than just doing it by myself, was doing it with other people and making good friends through the hikes, through the mountain climbs, and even through the work. It seemed to me that there's only so much you can go through with somebody without becoming super close to them. Like, you know what I mean? That if you're going through like terrible work and amazing outside of work experiences with somebody, it's almost inevitable that you're going to become very close to this person. And I made some awesome friends, and I'm really excited to go see them this summer.
Yeah, I think a huge thing about the summer is to experience things that you never would experience during the school year or at the seminary, and especially those friendships that you build that aren't with specifically super religious people or people who aren't people who you would never interact with before. That's really important, and that's a cool thing that you experienced.
Right, and even personally for me this summer, I worked at a little off-the-wall, a muffler factory right by my house, very blue-collar, just performance exhaust manufacturer for like Corvette and more high-end things like that. But I was really immersed in, and I was just a laborer, did really anything under the sun in the factory. But I think I was really immersed in the just blue-collar culture, which I come from a semi-blue-collar family, but not nearly like just every day in the trenches with these guys that all they care about is getting their paycheck and the parts they're going to put on, they're going to, use that paycheck with to, put on their Mustang or whatever car at home. So it's really like seeing the ideals of myself and then the people I work with were drastically different, but then seeing where we were really, really very similar, I think, in the way we kind of went about work and just and working together. And it was really interesting how we kind of came together, and how I grew pretty close to these people whom I would really never outside of work,
Interact with.
jive with, interact with.
That's
right.
one thing I really discovered in Yellowstone is because of the very pressurized conditions, if you will. These people I met, a lot of them were internationals, and a lot of them were people I would never interact with typically, obviously because there's a huge language barrier there. My roommate was from Poland. He was super cool. Some of my friends, one of them, she's in med school in Connecticut. Another one, she's working right now at Disney in LA. Another one's a student in Wisconsin. Another one of my good friends is going to college in California. And none of these girls I would typically interact with just because our lifestyles are very different, and a seminary usually puts a barrier or an apparent barrier between guys and girls, but living with them, it opened up sort of like, okay, I have to connect with somebody in order to survive, if you will, and
Right.
to experience this with, because nobody wanted to go through that alone. And I'm sure you guys have experienced the same thing. Like at work, no one wants to work by themselves.
Right,
Yeah.
and I think that was one thing. So like, there's the one like grumpy old guy came in. He's been there for 30 years, and he was like, he pretty much goes at it himself. He really you don't want to work too close with him, or else you might lose a finger. But there was me and a couple other college kids and a couple of the younger guys that work there, and it was really like just goofing around and like kind of joking around throughout the day that helped all of us get through the day and get through like just the grind of the work week. And I think that's something that is maybe underrated, and really just our daily lives overall is a sense of fraternity and just fellowship, which it helps us get through those necessary but rough times in our lives.
Yeah. For me, I worked at a summer camp, Camp Christopher, which is part of the Catholic Diocese, and it's out near Akron. So I've been familiar with it. I've worked there this was my second summer, and then I camped there for a lot of years. So I was familiar with a lot of the people, but the thing about working there is you're on staff, and this group of people becomes your family, whether you like it or not, and that was a really powerful thing. Yeah, for me this summer, like my coworkers we were all so close. Like that was really cool and a really powerful thing. But also, I think what was huge in my summer was just the interaction with these kids, who you think about how daily everything that you do is possibly impacting the life of a little kid. So that was one really powerful thing that I got out of that summer experience. Is just normally you guys work. Most of your interactions were with older people or people
Right.
your age,
Right.
and for me it was kind of just immersed in this child land where I got to go back into
Childland.
I got to go back to childhood and act like a complete loser and weirdo, and
That
people
probably
loved
wasn't
it.
very difficult.
No, it was actually one of the easiest things that I've ever experienced in my life.
Well, I remember doing something like that last year at summer camp, but there is something really cool about working with kids, because some of them, I worked with 11-year-olds, which 11-year-old boys are like the worst kind of humans we have. Because these boys really didn't want to be there. They just walked around talking about Minecraft the whole time. But some of them, like the energy that these kids have, like this is the only time they'll get to go on a vacation this summer, or this is the only time they'll get to go camping this summer. So everything you do is the most exciting thing. It's the most exciting thing that they could do, and it really helped me realize last year that like stuff that I'm taking for granted, like, oh, I'm just walking around this camp because I have to, this is my job. These kids are super into it. Why shouldn't I have the same attitude?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like the cool thing about these little kids is the smallest things to you can seem like the biggest things in the world to them. And the cool thing about having younger campers is it's so easy to fascinate them, and their imagination and their wonder and love for life is so incredible, and it's inspiring, and it gives you life.
Right. You have little siblings, so that you're like,
Yeah, it's every single day at home this summer. It was a little difficult coming back home from finally being out on my own, and then literally just being woken up by Nerf guns hitting my nose, just anything under the sun, just little kids just jumping all over you. But it's definitely a good time. I'm pretty used to that. But one thing I know, I had a number of experiences over the summer. I would maybe want to ask Dom and Mike here. Did you guys have any experiences in your job that maybe unexpected that really kind of shed some light on your vocation, like particular experiences maybe?
Well, there were definitely a few. I'm glad you asked that, because I tried to go into the summer with, as one of our priest friends here, Father Damien would say, our Paschal mystery lenses, our Paschal mystery glasses, to see what we can glean from the world and to show us that Christ is really there everywhere. And there was one day in particular, my morning cook shift started at 5:30 a.m. and ended at 2:30. And they're really short on dishwashers this week, so I picked up the night dish shift, which started at 2:30 to 10:30 p.m. So I was staring down the barrel of a 17, 18-hour day.
Nice little grind there.
Yeah, it was a long day.
Oh.
And in the morning, I was a cook, and I was looking at the dishwasher. I'm like, that's gonna be me, and I really don't want to do that. But constantly, I have to take my dishes back. I'm like, got sauce that's burned to the bottom of the pan. Like, that sucks for this guy. But I was like, oh crap, that's gonna be me tonight. So I just have all these dishes. I keep taking back to this guy, and at one point he's like, how do you guys go through this many dishes? How the heck do you guys do this? Like, I don't know, man. We gotta cook for all these people out front. And we worked at a cafeteria, so a lot of them were those metal stainless steel pans.
Right.
Oh man.
And if you had to take them back, or else your area would get cluttered, you would slow down, it was unsanitary, so the managers would make you take them back.
Right.
So it gets to 3 o'clock, and I start doing the dishes. I get steel wool, and I got my fingers all cut up from the steel wool.
Nice.
But I start scrubbing the dishes, and there's grime everywhere, and you're using all the chemicals you can to make it easier for you. And about 2 hours in, I realized, you know what? Jesus is the perfect dishwasher. If you equate those pans to our life and the grime to sin, he's just waiting, standing there back in the dish room, waiting for us to bring those pans back, just to stand there with a smile, scrubbing all the dishes off. And they all get perfectly clean, and they just puts them back on the shelf and just wants you to take them back.
The divine dishwasher.
The divine dishwasher.
Wow.
There he is.
That is the next big.
The big devotion.
Devotion.
To the divine Jesus with steel wool in one hand.
The divine dishwasher weekend. I can see the faculty.
He's got his flow in that.
Yeah, he's got the hat on and everything.
Nice.
But then I was reflecting even back to when I was being a cook in the morning. As sons of the Father, we have to take our dirty dishes back. We have to. It's not just that Jesus is waiting there for him. It's a two-part thing. We have to take the dirty dishes back to him so that he can clean them. As a dishwasher, I wasn't going to go dirty. I wasn't going to get in their way. I wasn't going to force them to bring them back. In the same way, Christ waits for us to bring our dishes back. And if you don't, your area is going to get cluttered. It's going to slow you down. It's going to be unsanitary for you to live in this sin-wrecked world. So you have to take your dishes back. And then there's an entire rack just waiting of clean dishes, just waiting there for you so that you can use them and then bear fruit or cook or whatever, or make mufflers or help out kids. Whatever you're waiting for it to do, you have to get your dishes clean in order to do that.
Well, for me, that was a really cool symbolic image. But for me, it was kind of more hands-on. In the seminary, I think we're all on the same path. We're all kind of going through this together. And there's a lot of times where, for me personally, I just get lost in this kind of seminary life.
It's almost like a subculture.
Yeah. So it's assumed that we're all going through this process. It's assumed that we're all, working towards theology and then hopefully ordination.
Which does creates a good house, and it's good that we have that.
Exactly, but sometimes it lends you to kind of get consumed in that, and then you kind of, for me, I've last year I sometimes forgot about my vocation and how powerful that is and how awesome that could be in my life. But then going outside the seminary, people look at you as someone different. They look at you as so holy and so high,
Very true.
which isn't very true.
A little scary.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
But yeah, people do put you on a pedestal.
Yeah, and then they look at you in this certain way, and they talk to you, and they're kind of in awe a lot of times. When I'm outside the seminary and treated like this, or not just treated like this, but I encounter people who are not used to seminarians. I get to minister to them and talk to them about the seminary or my vocation or just religion in general. And through these conversations, because they see me as a very knowledgeable, faithful person, which is not completely true, but because they see me as this, I get to encounter them. I had a cabin. It was the second oldest boys' cabin, and the raunchiest group of boys that I've ever seen at camp. So a lot of kind of sexual references, and they're pretty horny, honestly. So,
Well, they're high school
Yeah,
guys,
high school
so
guys.
you gotta expect that.
but they were kind of above average in terms of their lustful views. So, but they're a bunch of Catholic school kids, and they are kind of knowledgeable about the faith and the church. So they asked me tons of questions, and I got to talk to them about Christian sexuality to a certain extent that they could grasp. And although some of them might have just let it completely pass them, I think that was a really cool way to. It really inspired me to continue on in my seminary life. And another example is like I was walking. It was like 9:30 at night. I was walking from the dining hall, about to go back to my cabin, and there was like a girls' cabin that was on the beach. So I was walking by them. I was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And then for some reason, I just got looped into this group of girls. And then like 10 minutes later, we're all sitting down, and they're like just spitting back all these questions at me, and just they're so interested, and they were so like they're so captured in like the seminary life and just Catholicism, and I got to witness my faith to them in that way. So but that just inspired my vocation, and seeing how like this actually applies to the real world rather than at seminary where we're learning, and sometimes we don't make that connection.
Right, and I find those times are very, give a little confidence and clarity to my vocation, because a lot of times, especially, like you said, being in seminary life, it can kind of get maybe a little monotonous, so we can kind of sink into just getting our things done. But then when, having, these experiences outside, especially during the summer, and seeing, wow, people do look to me for, to a certain extent, for example, and there are a lot of ways you can impact the world, and just where we are right now, not just when we're, God willing, maybe we're ordained, but right now we have a lot of ways we can impact the world. And there was one time so I was going into my job this summer. I was kind of dragging my feet out, and I was I do not want to get up at 5 o'clock every day and go to work and go make mufflers and weld stuff. I was not feeling it. But then and one thing I was I heard all these guys doing all these awesome things with youth groups and camps over the summer, and I was how am I going to have an opportunity to witness to my vocation and kind of grow towards the priesthood at this job. And I was there's no way that can happen here at the factory. And then literally first day I walk in and I find out my boss died the day before. Oh. My boss died, and so the whole factory, I was I worked at this place the summer before, so I knew the lady pretty well, but she'd worked there for 30 years, so everyone was very close with the factory. So everyone at the factory was just devastated, and so I walked in there, and so it really didn't affect me very much. But so I thought, but I walked in there, and I just had the opportunity to all these people were just spilling their stories about her, and just really all I did was I didn't even say anything to any of these people, but they just they just spilled their stories to me and were just talking to me, and it really took me by surprise, because there's a couple of these guys that are really very blue collar, very macho. Hard guys, macho guys.
These are the guys that haven't cried since they're 4 years old.
Exactly, yeah, and they're tearing up, telling me about these stories about their boss, and and it was really just very wild to me, and very, and I just had the opportunity to be a person to counsel these people, and it wasn't necessarily something I had to say, but it was just being there. And so that kind of showed me, and I think that was kind of a way of Christ saying look, no matter where you are, there's an opportunity to minister. Whether we're at John Carroll, we're in the seminary, we're at our jobs over the summer, wherever you are, you have an opportunity to minister to Christ and just to comfort people, even if it's not necessarily throw Catholicism in their face, just to help improve their lives and their situation.
I think that's one big thing I noticed, and I talked to my spiritual director about this. In Yellowstone, I didn't really have an opportunity to really evangelize and say, oh, listen to the gospel and listen to everything that Jesus has to say. But it was a lot of just living what it means to be a Catholic in everyday life. So I think what we want to end with that is just living as a Catholic in everyday life. And it really truly is being a witness of what Jesus Christ taught in the Gospels. Just be a loving person, be a caring person, be a person that people want to go to in those situations, and be a person that people want to have fun with. Jesus went to parties. It was something that he was really super into. He wanted to encounter people where they are, and I think that's one thing the summer really offers us the opportunity to do, is to meet people where they are, rather than including here at the seminary, where it can just seem like, oh, we're just put on this pedestal as seminarians, we walk around like we're in suits a lot of the times. But in the summer, we really do have an opportunity to get into the dirt and get really into the culture and see what it's like. Wherever you are in life, just be that witness of Christ, no matter where you are, whatever you feel like that moment you're being called to do. It doesn't have to be some great vocation. Just in that moment, how are you being called to love that person? How are you being called to be Christ to that person? Whether it's washing dishes and not complaining, whether it's talking to the people at camp and explaining your faith to them, or whether it's at the factory just working hard and listening to these people's stories. That is being Christ to them. That's going out into the deep, and that's seeing what these people have to say.
And we shed what was left of our